You're listening to the Big and Tall Sports Show with your hosts Pete Apostolopoulos and Alex Reed.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the first ever exclusive Big and Tall Sports Podcast interview. Joined today by Steve Dangle, the ultimate Leafs internet personality. Steve, how you doing today?
Excellent. How about you?
I'm doing well. Recording this on Tuesday, a day after an absolute offensive outpour between the Leafs and the Islanders. Steve, what did you think of the game last night?
I mean, it was such a Leafs game, such a very, very, very frustrating game, and I think a bit of a microcosm of the season, right? All the young players were exciting. They performed well. They were an offensive juggernaut, and they did all right. They got 1 point, but they should have got 2. And I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, if they make the playoffs, well, what did you expect? Did you expect them to make the playoffs? It's not a big deal if they miss." Well, I've seen what they're capable of. Like, I've seen them sit in a playoff spot at multiple points during the season. They should make it. Just like this game. I've seen them with the lead 4 times. Sometimes it was a multi-goal lead. There was 1 point where they had a lead with they got the lead with 2 minutes and 1 second left in regulation, and they couldn't pull it off. I was amazed to see how many people on social media today were confused as to why some Leaf fans might be frustrated by that garbage pile.
Steve, Pete here. We've seen Freddie Anderson have some ups and downs this year. I think for the most part he's played pretty well, apart from maybe the beginning of the season when he was kind of getting his feet wet. Do you think that, he gave up 6 goals last night, and he's been a little shaky as of late. Do you think that it all falls on him, or do you think that it's more of a defensive effort as well?
It's hilarious, the idea that it all falls on him, and I saw him take the brunt of the criticism. Like, Freddie, holy smokes, welcome to being a Leafs goalie. At the beginning of the season, when he was faltering, it was all his fault. When he was playing great, he got none of the credit. And now he's had a few straight bad games, and it's all his fault again. Like, I don't know how anyone who actually watched that game with the 2 eyes in their head looked at that and went, you know what? He got great defense in front of him. The Leafs can't collect the puck behind their net. They can't protect the front of the net. Freddie allows rebounds. Where's the defense clearing them? Where are they?
No kidding.
I mean, he wasn't exactly a Vezina candidate last night, and he hasn't exactly been that way over the last month or so. But what do you expect? What do you want? The team hasn't been helping him at all, and I think the only reason they don't get the same criticism as him is 6 defensemen, and there's only 1 goalie.
Now, you hit a little bit about the young players continually doing their part. Alec and I have had this conversation about what exactly the Leafs going to do at the deadline, and you just talked about, again, how their defense has not been great this year. We both agreed that bringing in a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk might not be in the best interest of the way that this team's building right now. Would you agree with that, or do you think that, bringing in a veteran defenseman to make a playoff push this year is the move?
No, that's not the move at all, and I think this team has a steel will up at the top with Shanahan and with Lou. I can't imagine them trying to make a big addition at the deadline this year at the potential expense of something else. They've basically done everything right up to this point. I don't see them changing that now. I mean, what are their needs? It'd be nice if they added a defenseman, preferably young, preferably right-handed. Well, they just did that with Alexei Marchenko, and they did it without actually losing Frank Corrado, which I think is it's a minor miracle if you look at the Frank Corrado situation heading into the season. What else would they like? They would like a depth center. Okay, you can get those for relatively cheap. So if you want to do that, go for it. I think you can afford to expend a 4th or 5th round pick, seeing as, you've had all kinds of picks over the last few years. So if you want to get a depth center, go for it. Other than that, I see no reason for this Leafs team to spend anything. I mean, you are what you are.
So, Steve, you've kind of become sort of an internet phenomenon over the past 5 years. Is that a fair statement to say?
I don't know. I think
without you being too humble about it. Is that a fair statement?
I guess. I mean, I think the Cash Me Outside girl is a bit of a phenomenon. A phenomenon is something that's unintentional. This started as something unintentional, but I've been working pretty hard at it for a while. I'm just happy it's working out.
So if you could describe, I know there's a lot of people, myself included, that have watched you for a long time, but if you could describe, for those of you who maybe haven't watched Steve Dangle, how this all started and how this all came to fruition. If you could give a quick summary as to how Steve Dangle became who he is today, could you give me that and maybe tell the folks at home why they should be tuning into you?
Sure. Well, I started as a Ryerson student in radio and television art. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to work on a sitcom or something. And very early in my second year at Ryerson, I got mad after the Leafs lost their first game of the season, so I made a YouTube video. And then after the second game, I made another one. After the third game, I made another one. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this after every Leafs game. That'll be fun. That'll be a funny little project, and I might learn a thing or two coming out of it. Well, a couple dozen views turned into job opportunities, and now I'm in my 10th season doing this, and I still make a video after every single Leafs game. I work for Sportsnet. I write for Sportsnet.ca, make videos for Sportsnet.ca. And I'm basically a lunatic. Like you're not gonna get the guy wearing a suit talking about X's and O's and all that. I didn't even play hockey growing up. I'm just a really passionate fan, and I try to throw some humor in there too. And I mean, I try to get creative because, I mean, you try saying Leafs lose, 1,000 times over a 10-year span. It's not just saying, oh, well, they lost again. You gotta find a way to make it cool, and I'm unique. I challenge you to find someone out there who's like me.
Now, we just touched on it that the three of us all agree that the Leafs should kind of stand pat at the deadline. But moving forward, if they swing and miss on a defenseman in free agency, or if they decide that they don't want to allocate the funds to sign a big-name defenseman, I know it's kind of tough to say because we love them all, but which kind of these guys could you see being young guys in English? Could you see being kind of the odd man out if they were to make a move for a defenseman in the future?
It's interesting because, I think if the Leafs do absolutely nothing, they still improve just because of how young they are. So I don't think they're as handcuffed as some people have said, but I don't think it'll be a Nylander. He's too important to that team, and he's too good. His talent is too high end. I think you're looking more at small acquisitions. So you're looking at losing a prospect like Tobias Lindbergh, or you're looking at, I think the best prospect they'd look at giving up would be like a Brendan Leipzig. And even still, I'd rather them hold on to him. Maybe a Nikita Soshnikov, but probably not. I don't think you're going to see the Leafs give up a bright young player unless they get a deal that really, really knocks their socks off. And I just don't think that's out there. The Leafs should really try to benefit from the position they put themselves in. They're going to improve internally just based on how young they are. They're going to develop. They still got all their draft picks, and they've put themselves in an amazing position for the upcoming expansion draft, where they're going to lose pretty much next to nothing. They're not going to lose anyone of any consequence. Whereas some of the better teams around the league, they're going to lose big names, and they're in trouble. And you got teams looking to make moves so they're not totally screwed come expansion draft. So in terms of the Leafs need to make a move, they've made their moves, and their moves have put them in a fantastic position going into the offseason. So I don't see the urgency. I think the urgency comes from frustrated fans like me who watch them lose 6-5 of the Islanders and go, why? But you can't be making panic moves.
You just touched on it a little bit. It was going to be one of my questions that I wanted to ask you. But the Leafs are in a good position right now in terms of expansion with Vegas coming. Who are some of the teams that you think could be in trouble? And there were some reports that said that if Las Vegas could potentially become a player at the trade deadline if they get their paperwork finalized before then, who would be some teams to look out for to possibly making a deal before the expansion draft to maybe save themselves from having to make some tough decisions?
Well, Pittsburgh seems like a pretty obvious one because they got that whole Marc-Andre Fleury, Matt Murray thing going on, trying to figure out who's their guy in net. Tampa is a big one. What are they going to do with Ben Bishop? Is Vasilevsky their guy of the future? You know what? The off season that they're having might be a bit of a blessing because it might be easier to be a bit of a seller, and then all of a sudden, you might actually get something for a player that you otherwise would have lost in the expansion draft because you kept them because you were in a great playoff position. St. Louis, any team that is stacked with good players. Chicago is in a really interesting position. Columbus is one that maybe should be worried because they were in a rough position to begin with. Lots of players with expensive deals, lots of players with no movement clauses. Luckily for them, they've had a good season, but the problem they're experiencing or going to experience is you have all these players now, these good young players who you might not have lost that ended up having really good seasons, and you're going to need to protect them or you're going to need to re-sign them, and they're going to be expensive and they're going to crunch you up against the cap, and the cap might remain flat, as Elliot Friedman broke this week. So the irony is most of the teams that are worst prepared for the expansion draft are the best teams. It's just kind of an evening out sort of thing.
Now, from what you've heard, what's the likelihood of Vegas actually being able to make trades and acquisitions at the trade deadline?
This is actually the first I've heard of it, believe it or not. I haven't heard anything, and I was becoming pretty good friends with Tom Barashka, who was running GeneralFanager.com, a great cap website. Then he got scooped up by Vegas, and I don't know, a lot of the questions I would ask him all the time were NHL team related. Now I can't do that because I can't put him in an awkward position, right? So Vegas is a huge player, though. Whether they're allowed to make deals, to me, is it's almost inconsequential. A lot of deals at the trade deadline are still going to be out of fear of that boogeyman, out of fear of losing players to Vegas.
So there was an article written by Emily Sadler, January 31st, about it. So you can go give it a read after we're done talking about it.
Oh, I know Emily. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, you're kind of, I guess, an anomaly in today's sport media world. We're both sport media students here, and you came and spoke with us in our social media for sport class. Do you think that your style of kind of Twitter and blogging and YouTube is sort of the direction that the sport media world needs to go in, or do you think that you're kind of stuck in an anomaly of being your own entity and the traditional sport media world will continue and you can kind of be yourself?
Well, I don't know if it necessarily has to be my style in terms of presentation. I think some people are going to gravitate that way. I'm surprised more haven't. Everyone, especially the younger demographic, and I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking like 14 and under. A lot of those folks, they're huge on YouTube, and those are their movie stars. Those are their TV stars, right? So I'm surprised more students in their early 20s haven't latched on to becoming a video blogger because, it's not a hobby. That's just the way things are going. People are YouTubers now. That's how people get messages across. But, over the years, people keep asking me, well, how do you get a job? How do you get a job? How do you get a job? And that answer is getting harder and harder to answer without lying a little bit. And the truth of the matter is there are fewer places to go and get jobs, and the jobs are harder to get, and there's more people applying for them. So, you can look at that as a doom and gloom thing and shake your head and go, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Or you could look at the obvious solution, which is not necessarily an easy one, but it is the obvious solution. Create your own stuff. YouTube is an excellent way to do that. It's in the first part of the name. You. You got to be your own presenter. You got to be your own video editor. Shoot your own stuff. I wonder if the Athletic is everyone in the sports media industry, whether they work for the Athletic or not, is invested in how it does, whether it's a flop, whether it's a success, whether subscription-based news on the internet is the way to go. So I think the traditional way of getting jobs and advancing your career, I think that's slowly on its way out. If you're lucky enough, you might get in, but I think creating your own opportunities, which even though I work at Sportsnet, that's what I've done. I think that's the way to go.
Do you think that through that you're given a little more freedom to be not more opinionated, but you can, because of the way you put a spin on things, you're allowed to kind of poke more fun maybe at the team or talk about things that maybe the traditional writer or journalist might not be able to talk about in their weekly articles?
I think so, maybe. Because I've gotten to talk to a bunch of the Leafs and a bunch of players from other teams, and gotten a media pass, gone to the morning skates, done interviews and stuff like that. But that makes it harder to joke about these guys. You got to be fair with them. You can't be saying, insulting things about these guys and then be afraid to talk to them because you said something, to be a jerk to them. I don't think that's what I'm talking about. But on the opposite end of that, you got to be able to talk about these guys objectively. And if you start to build a relationship with them and kind of get friendly with them, how do you do that? How do you do that? It's hard to criticize your buddies, and I've seen it many times where guys get friendly with these players, and then they're fair and they're objective still, but then you see them get on TV and they don't actually say much of anything. So I think your job is still to be compelling and informative and objective. But the moment compelling goes away, I mean, you're dead, right? Because you're fighting for eyeballs, you're fighting for ears. So if you can't do that, it's not going to work.
So we have a couple more questions for you. We won't keep you too much longer. I have a specific question about your thoughts on the Calder. Now, a lot of people are obviously putting all the eggs into the Austin Matthews versus Patrick Laine battle. I'm a proponent of the fact that I think a lot of writers are in love with Mitch Marner, and I think that if he has a big second half, he could maybe find his way into that third spot along with guys like Zach Werenski or Provorov or maybe even Anthony Mantha if Detroit can sneak into the playoffs. What are your thoughts on the Calder race and how it's going to shape up over the rest of the season with all the young guys here?
It is very interesting because this is the time of year where awards are basically decided, I find, especially the ones that are voted on by the Pro Hockey Writers Association. And it's whoever is the hottest, basically starting now. So who just got Rookie of the Month? Was that Mitch Marner?
Mitch Marner,
Mitch Marner.
Oh, boy. And he's looking good again. And the Leafs are struggling, but he still looks really good. Austin Matthews was so bonkers hot for a while, but now if he's just regular human-looking Austin Matthews while Marner is still performing at this ridiculous click, Marner probably gives a better quote than Matthews too. Ontario boy. I don't know. You could definitely see Marner sneak into that conversation. Now, what is interesting, and you guys might want to double-check this, because I'm just in my car. I don't have computer in front of me or anything. But I think Matthews basically has all these bonuses built in, basically, because he's the first overall pick. Mitch Marner, I think, winning the Calder would kick in a bonus that would hurt the Leafs more than it would hurt the Leafs if Matthews won it. I think we're looking at a situation where it's a two-horse race, and they're both on the same team. I think Laine, unless he gets really piston hot over the stretch here, especially if the Jets miss the playoffs and the Leafs make it, you're looking at a two-horse race, and both horses are on the same team. I'm trying to think of the last time that happened for the Calder. You might have to go back to Danny Heatley and Ilya Kovalchuk. But I think it's down to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, if I'm honest.
So you just touched on it a little bit, and the last question I want to ask you is, do you think this team is going to make the playoffs?
Oh my God! Well, the Bruins are starting to take themselves out of the race. Tampa is in dead last in the East, but they're still not totally out of it. They're like 6 points back or 7 points back at Toronto. You have a hot week and you're tied. Especially if the Leafs keep playing the way they are. And this is the key to it all. If the Leafs keep playing the way they are, they don't need to pass Montreal. They don't need to pass Ottawa. They just need to hold on to that third spot in the Atlantic or get one of the wild cards. And you're probably looking at the bottom wild card. So the team I am most worried about, the team that basically lied to everyone a couple of weeks ago and said two of their best players were out for the season, and then those two players came back, the Florida Panthers. If you're the Leafs, how are you not terrified of what that team can do now that they're healthy? And how do you not feel them crawling up your spine? How do you not feel their breath on your neck? Like, that is the team that if the Leafs make the playoffs, that'll be why. Because the Florida Panthers took their spot. Right now, it's 50-50. It's absolutely 50-50. I said coming into the season, the Leafs had like a 20% chance of making the playoffs. So I guess 50-50 is pretty darn good. But man, they really got to pick up their stocks. They got to. I mean, has a team in the NHL had more leads than the Toronto Maple Leafs? Like, even ahead of Washington or Pittsburgh? It has to be the Leafs. But they keep giving them up. They keep giving them up.
They're almost the reverse of the Toronto Raptors, who we see come back night in and night out. Yeah,
seriously. You know what it reminds me of? Because I used to really be into wrestling. And Booker T.
Booker T. Yes.
Yeah.
Used to always say, five times champion. And then I don't remember who it was, but they picked up the mic and went, wow, I can't believe you lost the title 5 times. And it's true. They keep getting the title and handing it right back. I don't want the Leafs to end up like Booker T. I want them to hold on to the damn thing. Go on a bit of a run. Be CM Punk.
CM Punk. Yeah, and then once you finally get the title, you run off the company and sue them afterwards.
Yes,
so
and then get beat up.
And then get destroyed by an actual fighter.
Yeah, guy in the middle card. Yeah, but you see what I'm saying, right?
I see exactly what you're saying.
So, I mean, as long as they keep getting the lead, they just got to focus on losing it or not losing it.
Do you think that, obviously, like, because they're so young, do you think that as they mature as a team in the next coming years, do you think that we'll kind of see that, look out for the third period, we all think that they're going to blow the lead? Do you think we'll see that kind of change?
Well, I mean, Roman Polak and Matt Hunwick aren't getting ID'd at the bar. Like, this isn't, and neither is Jake Gardner anymore. Maybe sometimes with the LCBO because of that 25 and under rule, but, they're not as young as people give off. And even Nikita Zaitsev, that's a guy in his mid-20s too. But there's going to be a learning curve with him because he's coming from the KHL. Connor Carrick is legitimately young. We forget, but Morgan Riley is legitimately young. I think, a good way to get good at something is to fail at it a bunch of times. Take it from me. So I wonder if this doesn't help the Leafs out in the long run. Like, I wonder if they understand this pain. They understand things that they did when they were younger, which in the future will be now, and that'll help them out. Yeah, I mean, you see guys who they win all their junior career, and then they come to the NHL, and they lose, and it causes them to crumble. It's amazing to me that Taylor Hall is associated with losing. Like, that guy won everything in junior. The idea he kind of thought of as, he was on the Oilers and they stunk, and now he's on the Devils and they stink. That's incredible to me, but sometimes you need to lose a few times to help you learn to become a better pro and player.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's going to wrap it up. Steve, you don't mind just staying on the line once we end it off here. Thanks again for joining us. We're joined by Steve Dangle. Check him out on YouTube and on Sportsnet and the Steve Dangle podcast, and the list goes on and on. Steve, thanks again so much for joining us.
No problem, guys. Go Leafs.
All right, that's going to do it for us for the Big and Tall Sports Podcast. First ever exclusive interview.